All right, guys. So we're gonna start here shortly. Just want to make sure that things are where they need to be. Great. So first things first, on week 5, I have not done it yet because I have to still set it up. But the assignment is for you guys to turn in your finished work. Oh wait, I actually did that on week 4. Didn't I? Yeah. Four. Okay, great. Yeah, excellent. Good. Did everybody got a chance to submit it?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I didn't submit mine because I went in to take the screenshot and it decided none of my textures worked and I lost all my textures.
Did you got my reply to your email?
I didn't see, I checked it earlier, but I must not have checked it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna explain more or less what I think happened, right? And we can always look into this a little bit later.
Yeah, we can talk after class.
Yeah, when we get a chance. But so when you're moving from computer to computer, there is a possibility that if you only drag the file, the rest of your source images and everything else is going to be left behind. So this is why it's good that when you save, you actually save the entire project folder and not just the single file. The single file will have your scene, but it would no longer be connected to the actual project. So when you go in to open your textures, they might no longer be there because they're part of your project. So next time you're planning on switching computers or whatever the situation might be, make sure that you actually take the entire project forward with you. And that will assure that all your textures, whatever, is all put together. So when you open it, you don't run into those issues. And yes, and that's kind of like how you can mitigate that. And I would even encourage you from this point on to just save and submit the whole entire project folder. Because again, when I open it, I will have access to the whole entire thing. Now, here's a deal, an issue that you may run into. Those ones, it's not the same of saving just 1 MB teeny tiny file than saving a whole entire project folder. It's not the same. So I don't know if in your end you have limited amount of space that eventually you can max out on. Like it had happened to me. Can you believe it? 3 classes already. It's like I cannot even post a single comment because it tells me, oh, you exceeded your quota. I'm like, what are you talking about? I erased the whole entire content and created new content and I already exceeded my quota. Anyways, that's none of your problem. That's a me problem. But I'm just pointing out the fact that although that seems to be a continuing issue, if it happens on my end, it might as well happen on your end as far as I know. So therefore, I want to give you the chance to take screen captures. You see, with the screen captures, I can tell exactly what's on your scene. At that point, your screen captures, it should show your textures and everything else. I'm not asking you to render things just yet, but that is something that will definitely be coming on the upcoming weeks, where you're going to actually render out your scene, and that's perfect because I can look at the final product. And just to give you the heads up, that's kind of like what the screen captures are for right now. Without your rendering, show me your final product on the front, on the perspective view, on the side. So that's where things are at. So great. Make sure that to submit the actual assignment there. If you haven't done so yet, you must do it immediately. Today we have a little bit of a lecture. And at some point, hopefully we'll have the chance to look at everybody's work. I'm still debating on that. Here's why. You guys didn't really do anything too creative there. It's your first Maya project. I mean, how much time do we really need to spend critiquing each other's work with one thing that it was like, oh, just extrude polygons here and there. Like we didn't do anything special there at all, right? So that's why I'm still debating if that should be something, or instead we should spend the time just keep on learning the rest of the tool, which is something that even if we don't stop with this tool by tool, we still might not have time enough, during the whole entire course just to go through the whole entire program. But we will have time to go over the most useful tools that you guys will probably be using constantly. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started here with Maya. In today's lecture, I actually placed there a couple of videos talking about nerves. And nerves will be just like a different type of geometry that we can use on Maya. And they behave very differently than polygons, right? And that's what our lecture is going to be today, exploring nerves. So I saw a couple of hands.
Just real quick, so for the submission, like it says submit the MD file, but would you rather us submit like maybe a zip of the whole project file just for what you?
You can do it, yeah.
Because like you said, like so things aren't missing from the
Mhm.
project.
Exactly right, yeah, you can do that.
So I actually what I did was I saved my file all how I was supposed to on my hard drive and took it back to my computer to make sure when I started it up, it had everything.
Right.
And so when you would open it, it had everything, but then I opened it up again, some of my textures are missing, but then I like put one of the textures back and all the textures came back. Do you want me to like resend you that file?
So
Or-
at this moment, to be honest, I'm really more concerned of the screenshots. If the screenshots have the final product, chances are there's no need for me to open the file. If the screenshots are missing something that I'm like, oh, where is this? I will probably go in and try to open the file. For instance, you didn't do a door. Although we thought you must do a door, you didn't do it. I'll be like, maybe there's a door there and I just cannot see it. Let me open the file. So the file is more so for me to verification purposes, to make sure that you actually did the work. I don't foresee that me opening that if I have no need to do so. All right, but yes, let's go ahead and get started now with Maya. I'm trying to do my best, guys, to be diligent and to give you guys a couple of videos here and there. But this is a class that I'm teaching here for the first time, and that's going to take me some time to kind of build up that library. Eventually, this is all going to be videos. And class dynamics is going to be more so, all right, look at the videos, come here, work. Well, we're not there yet, but we're, hopefully on time, in time, get there. So anyways, let's go ahead and open Maya. So while this opens, I don't know what's going on. It kind of looks like it's installing now. I don't know what's the deal on my screen. So we'll wait for a bit there. But nerves, what nerve stands for? The word nerve, so N-U-R-B. So non-uniform, rational B-splines. So again, like I said before, the way they work is going to be much different from polygons. One of the advantage that nerves has is that the surface will always be smoother than polygons. Polygons, you will need a lot of geometry to kind of create a smooth surface through it. And although there's some smoothing workflows that you can use for polygons, there's some objects that they're just going to be better if we create just using nerves from the get-go. And we're going to look at some examples here in a minute. Guys, Maya is installing. I don't know what's going on with this thing. It's upsetting. We'll be patient. Oh, maybe my 2022 works. How about that? Oh, there we go. There we go. Yeah,
Yeah, it knows.
it's just doing this major update. Anyways, okay, I'm glad we're here. So polygons, here's where you can find them. We already know that. Nerves will be right here on the curves and surfaces shelf.
Oh, so they're like double curves?
Also, if you go into create, the very first set, nerves primitives, you will find them there. All right, the best way to explain nerves will be by using a plane. So why don't you go into create nerves primitives and select plane. You will see there a little teeny tiny patch. So think of nerves as a sheet of paper, little like a single sheet of paper. And this sheet of paper can take many forms, right? So when you actually try, there's some people that do sculptures with paper. You guys seen that? You've probably even taken some classes that do something like that. That's literally how nerves work. That surface, that nice whatever you create, is always going to be very smooth, but they're all a single patch. Let's go into the inputs of that single patch, and we can play with the width. So we can make this slightly bigger if we want to. I'm just clicking middle mouse button.
How do you find input again?
It'll be there. On the screen. Yeah, all the way to the right of the screen.
I don't know where it is. I can't find it.
Should be on the right side.
Yeah, I'm looking on the right side. It's not there.
Is yours not showing either?
Oh, mine's there.
Oh.
Never mind. I found it. I guess. Well, it was a different. I found it. I found it.
You got it? All right, good. And now let's go ahead and look at what we have. So pretty much we have like a border, right? But we got no inside geometry. In order for us to manipulate anything, we do need some geometry, right? Some points that we can pull and push to actually get something going. So we have patches in U and patches in V. UVs, where have we seen that before? The textures, yes, on the texture editor. So this is, I think, another good indicator on how nerves work. Like I said before, think of it as a sheet of paper. Now, we can do many shapes with this sheet of paper, but we need to add. Think of every time I bend this, think of as geometry, right? These lines that just happen on this paper, that would be the equivalent to geometry in U and V. Remember when we were doing textures? There were 2D textures. UV editor will give you those flat textures. Texturing nerves is actually way easier than polygons forever because they are already flat by themselves. That makes sense? Let's go ahead and increase patches on U. And you will see now the type of geometry I'm creating. And then let's increase the patches on V. Let's do 10 and 10. And now we can make shapes with that single piece of patch. Right click and hold on top of the nerves to see at the contents. So here's the subcomponents for every nerve. We have the surface points, we have the surface UV, the hull, isoforms, control vertex, and surface patch. Okay. If we go into let's start with the control vertex. Because vertex or vertices is something we really looked at, right? In a polygon, who can give me in their own words what a vertex is in a polygon?
One where the edge.
Excellent. Two edges meet, that's a vertex. 3 edges meet, that's a vertex. So many edges meet 1 point, that will always be a vertex. So here, instead, when you select each of these vertices, you will see that it will actually select a patch associated with it. And that's how much influence that one surface vertex has over the shape. So if I were to just move that up and down, you would see that the way it behaves is very different than the polygon. Number one, it's not attached to the surface like polygons work. And number two, notice how smooth that looks. With polygons, you would know that if we do the same exact thing, it will create a triangle shape of sorts.
So this is like more of something you would use like on a cloth or like fabric kind of materials.
The fabric are great examples on where you can use nerves. Yes.
Is there a way to increase the distance of the area of the effect? You know what I'm talking about?
So yes, so the kind of influence, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we can. Right now, all we did was select one vertex, and that's what it created. What if we actually select a couple of vertices? So I just selected 3 there. Right, and that influences the whole entire area as well. What about terrain? Would terrain be probably a good use for nerves?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, why not?
Suppressions.
Mhm.
Great for the back end.
Right, and you can see here when I push this down below, kind of the same situation happens where these nerves, or sorry, surface vertices are not attached to the actual patch, but yet it influenced the way it looks. Yes.
Just playing around with it, I've noticed that on the curve, once it's been in your incline, you can't select the vertices. Is that?
So what was that? Sorry.
So you see the hill that you have.
Uh-huh.
You see that point. Take away from it. You see how you can't, the little purple dot isn't there anymore on the face of the incline.
Oh, it's there. It's just like above it.
So
Where are all
there's
the
that one,
other
but then
dots?
the one closest to us. That one there.
Oh, this one.
It's not there anymore. Oh,
Like I said, it's not attached. Still there,
okay.
yeah, but it's not attached to the actual surface.
Okay.
So that's one of the main differences between polys and nerves. Vertex are attached to the actual geometry, while these ones aren't. That's one thing. Then we also have what is called the holes. And the holes would essentially be where everything connects. It's almost like the cage, right? The cage mesh that forms these objects, that form the nerves. So this one's, the cool thing is that you can move a lot of them at one time. It would move the whole entire either U or V point. So go ahead, select the hull, this one right here, and mess around with that for a second. And see what it does. All right, moving on. Now we have the isoforms. So go ahead and select the isoform. Now isoforms are interesting. So isoforms are literally like the curves that are contained within that nerve. Notice how I can select them, but I can now move them. I can click and drag, and that happens, but there's nothing really I can do with them. They do have its own purpose, and it's mainly to grab and create geometry out of an already created nerve. So if I grab an isoform, right, like again, I cannot move it, I cannot really do anything with it directly, but indirectly, I can go into maybe curves, right? And I can add actually a couple of different effects to it or different commands. So when working with nerves, you can go into surfaces, curves, deform, and mainly those three options or menus will give you all the options and all the things that you can work with nerves. I do have now one brief explanation to kind of illustrate further how these nerves work. What I would do just now is just go into my object mode. And I'll just delete this meanwhile, because I want to create now multiple objects. Now, because I'm in curves and surfaces, this is where my nerves will be. This is the equivalent of going here, right, and select. So I'm going to go ahead and create a, let's do a circle or a sphere. And let's do guitars or a donut, however you want to call it, lifesaver. And a cylinder. Now, different to polys, you will notice that the cylinder doesn't have the lids on. Right? Remember, the nerves are equivalent to a paper. Again, I just did this with a paper, and that's why they're really hollow. It doesn't have any lids to it. We can create those lids later if you want. Just for comparison, I'll create some polys just so that you guys see the differences. All right, so going to my cylinder here.
The tallest one or the,
I'm sorry,
which one's that one?
this one is a cylinder.
I mean, like, is
The
it
nerve
poly-
cylinder. So if you go in surfaces, nerve cylinder. So this one, if I go into my inputs, I can play with the radius, which is the size. The radius of the circles. The end sweep, you say that is 360. That means that this particular surface has been revolved 360 times. So if I just bring that number back, you would see that this is my single patch that I had earlier. It only has one coordinates. We can always change those, right? Here you go. Here's my single patch that I started with.
It says fails to compute.
I don't know what you're touching.
I'm touching the end sweeps.
Yeah, you can maybe
I
try.
can only go like up to 6 when I go back down. Like when I go to 0, I can only go up to 6.
Yeah.
Everybody's getting that?
But if you write it. like,
Yeah, go ahead and type 58 and see what happens on the end sweep. Does it give you an error?
No,
No,
you just have to like drag
Oh.
it.
you can't
Are
drag.
you doing it on a circle?
So to click and drag, is this the issue? Like you guys cannot click and drag?
Yeah.
You do this with the middle mouse button. So you select whatever aspect you want, then that scroll on your middle mouse button, you press it down and you drag.
No, so it does it like it does it with this, it doesn't do it with the sphere or the donut. It does it only with the sphere, like giant with the sphere. Like,
No, it doesn't work.
it only makes you move.
It doesn't work for me, sir, either.
Yeah. So why can't you do the donut? Same thing with the sphere. This I can.
It doesn't work for you.
It just.
All right, now, anybody else having problems with how to click and drag?
I can't seem to find the input.
All right.
We'll keep it there.
Here we go.
Instead of like this.
You got it. Oh, this was it. So click and drag and,
Oh, you don't even click that. That's what I was here.
No, that's to input the actual number.
Oh, I thought you had to drag like on the window. Yeah, that's fine. No, yeah, I thought you had to like drag it here.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's like,
I don't know.
in there.
All right. So again, you can bring it down to a single patch. And that's kind of like the whole point of that one exercise. Just to show you guys that all nerves are contained of that. Now, if I were to just kind of go back to what I had before, notice how much smoother this looks in comparison to the poly right next to it. Also, on top of that, when you start looking at the geometry, notice what is composed of, what really composed of nerves versus the actual polys, right? To get this amount, actually, let me go into the top window here.
Where are the points?
That's the thing, they don't have any.
Well, the other one did.
Yeah, but that's a polygon.
No, the plane did.
You gotta
We're
go to
messing with it.
Right click and do control vertex, see?
I'm on the surface points.
Is this what you're talking about? The control vertex?
the purple dots you need.
Oh, those ones, okay.
So notice how much smoother this is. And if I wanted to have my polygon to be as smooth as a nerve, I would need to definitely increase the amount of polys to obtain that. So
Cylinder doesn't.
I don't understand why they don't just call it polys instead of subdivision, whatever.
because that's the terminology.
Yeah, but no one calls it that.
What do you mean? What do you mean no one calls it? Right, so notice this, notice how many subdivisions I need to add, right? To create kind of similar of what I already have here. So let's say in this particular cylinder, let's do something fun. Let's actually close it down with some lids. And we can do so by right click.
It's the reason why nerves are better because they take up less computing power than like having a lot of subdivisions in a polygon.
That's another reason why, yes. They can be processing, they require less processing because they have less geometry to deal with. Yes, absolutely. And they give you a smoother surface, which ultimately, there's some objects that were gonna be better when they look smooth. Right. So
How do you determine that you should use that rather than polygons?
well, it depends on what you're doing. Some people just prefer to use polygons through and through. They don't really mess with nerves. Let me explain it this way. So you guys know the difference between a bitmap and a vector, right?
Yes.
What's the difference? Look at them with that.
Like it one is pixelated when you zoom in.
And the other one is not. Why? Because one uses math to calculate the smoothness, so no matter how much you zoom in or out, right? It actually still works out. Those are the vectors. Versus the bitmap that is like, well, it's all made by pixels. And therefore, if you zoom in and out, you're gonna lose resolution. This will be the equivalent to that. Polys are the equivalent to bitmap while nerves are equivalent to vectors.
It depends on preference and what you're going for, right?
And yes, it depends on what you're going for, and and you ultimately determine which one would be the best fit for your project, right? Would you do a logo on bitmap?
Probably not,
Why not?
because it require, if you're gonna make it smaller, you don't want it to be blurry, you want it to still be able to be seen. If you need to blow it up, if it's pixelated, it's not gonna look right.
Right. That's the same exact reason why there's gonna be some things that you're gonna be like, yeah, using polish for that is just not a good idea, right? Clothing. Sometimes, again, it depends on the workflow. Can you do a logo though using bitmaps?
Yeah.
Yes. Can somebody stop you? No. If you feel that's gonna be the best approach, then you just do it that way because that's your preference. But there's gonna be some strength by using nerves in some areas, and there's gonna be some strength by using polish in others. Polish can be extremely flexible for some things, but they do require more processing power than nerves. Okay. So anyways, with that said, now let's go ahead and try to get a lid here. Let's select the isoparm. And when I do that, just know that I can only click on certain areas. So I'm gonna click on the top lid there, or the top rim, I should call it. And now I'm gonna go into surfaces. And let's click on planar. Did everybody got this? Like a black
I got
lid?
it, I didn't get a black lid, I got this gray lid.
You got, okay, great. Awesome, then you don't have to worry about this. But this is something that happens, and it's kind of hard to grasp why it happens. I completely feel it's random, but it has to do with the way you create your objects. Sometimes when you create these additional nerves or surfaces, they can be on the right side, which is the positive side. This is the side that looks great, or the interior side, which is the one that looks black. You cannot do anything with the black area. If you see a polygon that looks black, it doesn't mean that it's automatically shaded by itself. No. It means that that's not the visible area. This is the visible area for it, the one in gray. So I'll show you how to fix this right now.
Try going upside down.
Yeah, it's reverse.
Yeah.
You're upside down, sir.
It's okay. I still have the same issue though, because if I want to, this is a 3D object, you guys. So if I were to have this way up top, I still have the same exact issue.
What if you tried to do it from the top? Does it change?
Of course, because again, this is a piece of paper where we can only view one side of it. One side, no good. The front side is the only one you can use. Just think about it that way. It's a piece of paper, one you cannot write on the back. You can only write on the front, right?
Fair enough. That looks like it.
So here's how you fix this. You select that that lid area. Actually, there you go.
How do
You can go into object mode for that. So object mode, you'll select the lid. And again, like I said before, curves and surfaces would be the ones that you would use more so for working with nerves. And I'm gonna go into curves and then all the way down, reverse direction. There. Now notice that my issue is gone. That is important that you guys understand where that is, because this will happen again and again and again. It depends on how you build your nerves, that you might get the correct side or you might not. It's just how it is. So just know that if you go into curves and flip it, or reverse direction, how they call it, you can fix it. So let's go ahead now and do the same for the other leg. So let's close down that cylinder. Select the isoparm first, remember that. Then go into curves, or sorry, I should say, surfaces planar. And there you go, that works. So maybe you're doing the bottom one now. And you'll know how to fix it. If you didn't got that issue at the beginning, you'll probably not have it now.
What if you're making like a planner that you want to see the bottom of? Like you don't want a top, like you're making a bucket, so
Okay.
do you want to make the
In that case, just delete the top. But you see, that will require for me now to make this bucket usable. Right here is not usable at all. Like the interior will totally come out as an emptiness. So for something like that, in my personal opinion, I feel that it might be better to do it under polys, because under polys is literally like 2 steps. I just go into here, right? Let's say we're creating some sort of blast. Select the face. And now I will probably just extrude that in. And then extrude that one more time down. You see, now I have a surface inside that is usable. And all the blackness of it, the unusable polys will be on the interior and not the exterior. Right, but again, nerves, I wouldn't necessarily use it to create something like that, as in going back to the paper example, they cannot behave like paper. So by creating a glass, chances are that something like this will always be problematic on the inside, because I'll have the negative area to deal with.
Are we still able to do some of the things you do with polygons with them, like extrude and stuff?
No, nerves work totally different. So again, just like vectors and bitmaps, the way you create vectors, it has to be with a pen tool always, never the brush, for instance. If you need to click and drag and have the Bezier handles on the vectors, it's kind of like this. Like you cannot just use the eraser and try to erase a vector. It doesn't really work that way necessarily, right? So over here is almost like you need to think of workarounds to get to do those same exact things that you otherwise would do with polygons.
So they
So-
both have their flaws.
So there is extrusion, but it just works differently. I'll show you one example with extrusion and curves, actually. But before I do that, let me just show you this object, because I want to make sure that you all understand how these ones work. Notice that here in this particular object, this particular isobarm is a little thicker than the rest. Can you guys see that?
Sort of.
It's a little thicker. And this is because this is where my 2 edges meet. So if I were to go again into my end sweep and just pull that away, this is why that edge is slightly thicker, because there's 2 edges put together. But in reality, if we just dial that back, we still have the single patch.
Is there a way to like do that kind of function with polygons where you're like multiplying?
No, two different worlds. Yes, yeah. Polygons and nerves, you just function to different, and the approaches therefore are also very different.
I'm just wondering, because in just Blender, there's an option to like make a pathway and make the object that is a normal vertex object, polygon object,
Oh,
like repeat on a path, kind of like that.
so if you're talking about if we can turn nerves into polys, yes, we can do that. We can convert them. But do they have like maybe different options, like the path option? I will show you one example with that right now. And yes, you can attach to path and curves, whether polygons or nerves, both. And So in this one example, let's go ahead and create a curve. So curves are also very related to nerves. And again, you can go into curves and surfaces all the way here, or you can go into create curves tool, go towards the bottom, and then you can do a CV curve or EP curve. Let's go ahead and do an EP curve. And here I can just kind of click and drag from my perspective view and kind of create a path.
I don't see anything.
I need more than I don't see anything. What do we need?
I'm clicking, but I don't see anything happening.
Did you click and drag?
All I got is this X.
Just got an X.
Is it yellow X?
Yes.
Oh, that's the M point. Oh. Like click, hold, drag. You should see a blue line.
Oh.
Is it working?
Yeah.
So with these curves, this will be the equivalent of an isoparm from an object, right? So we can, like at least on this one, I can maybe duplicate this. Who remembers how to duplicate an object?
Control D.
Control D, very good. And I can maybe just push it above, out of the way. And now with two curves, kind of like using the same shape, I can connect them. And I can use, I can do that using
Isn't there a button over there that says connected?
loft. So that would be,
What would that be?
I create my curve, I duplicate my curve, I grab one, shift select the other, go into surfaces, and go into loft.
So in a sense, for maybe more complex shapes like the donut stuff, are like all of those isoforms kind of acting as like exterior, in a sense, a cage. It's like generated within that
Mhm.
shape.
Exactly right. And notice, again, this is going back to the paper, is the one side only. And I think this example, you know, we can see it very clear. And of course, we can change this. I already showed you how to do that.
That's different from the attached curve.
Wait, so the question,
Hang on. You're saying this is different from what?
I said, is that different than attached curves?
Curve?
Attach
Then
curve
attach.
is the tool over there.
I can't go like up, I can only go on like.
Fifth, the sixth one on the
The X.
toolbar.
Yeah, a lot of these tools, it's just depending on how you're using it, right? So a lot of them might do similar things, and I don't think they are too different from each other at all. Yeah, because you get a very a very similar result anyways.
Oh, no, that is not the same. It doesn't add the faces, it just connects the path lines, kind of.
Okay.
Is it?
What was your question, Elaine? Okay. So anyways, you guys know already how to change this around if you need to, just reverse directions. And you have something like that.
Yeah, there's one side.
Let's go ahead and create another object. Oh, and actually, I'm kind of glad this happened. Notice if I try to, I can move this around. So this is kind of like my result. But if I were to click here, they still pretty much attached by the history.
So they're like controllers.
You can think of it as controllers. or just kind of like the parents, right, that kind of help build those shapes. So by default, they will always be attached. You can detach any objects from its parents or from the history by selecting them. Like I'm gonna select this object in particular. I don't want it no longer to be connected with this object over here. So I can go into edit, delete by history. And now the history between those two
Does it do it
should be removed. So they're no longer have any connections or relatability to each other.
Does that mean that you can't curve those still? Or-
No, now I can literally delete this and it won't change these at all.
Yeah, but like the thing on the right, can you still like manipulate it more, like
This one?
the one on my right side?
This one?
Yeah, like.
One of the holes. And it doesn't really interfere with it at all. All right, so that was a good example. Let's go ahead if we can do something different.
So,
Yes.
can you make curves that go like upwards, like on the y-axis? Because to me, whenever I try to do that, it's still like flat on like the grid.
All right. Mine was flat on the grid. Check it out.
Is it possible to not have it be flat though? Can you make it so it can be off?
Of course, this is a 3D program. You can do that. Now,
Just
I will
change
probably
it,
just go into the side, and when you create your curve, right, you actually do it following the axis that you want. Now notice, I press enter, and follow my y-axis. Or you can just grab this and just, I mean, you have your tools. You can still use those. They don't stop working. You can just grab your tools and place it however you feel. You can rotate it, you can scale it up or down. You can do all that good stuff. Do what? This year's handles? Well, for the curves, they do. But those ones, once you hit enter, you don't really have access to those anymore. If you right click though, you have the curve points. I'm sorry, I should say the control vertices, and you can change them in that way, or you have the holes. So, what I'm going to do now, one curve, and I will go and create a nerves circle, not a sphere, a circle. Okay, and I can now shift select my curve. And now, why don't we try to do an extrusion? So we'll go into surfaces, extrude. There you have a wonky looking object that belongs into the location of speed.
So nothing's happening where it's 6 degrees.
I want to walk you through this one more time. Okay. Try not to do this while I'm doing it. I feel that sometimes that's why we tend to get lost, because we're trying to do something while looking at me doing it. The idea is that I do it, you watch, you take notes, and then you do it. Right? If you try to do it with me, chances are you're going to be lost every 5 seconds. So again, go to my side view. I'm going to grab my curves tool here. There's my curve tool. I'm going to start from the origin. drag, click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, right? I press enter. Now I can go into my curves tool and do a circle. Click one time. Now with my circle selected, I'm gonna select my curve. And now I go into my extrusion. Surface, extrude.
So you can taper it.
It didn't really follow the curve of the.
It doesn't follow the curve because I have fixed path off. If I change this to on, now it follows the curve. And this is how you can make like tubes and cables and things of that nature. And one cool thing, a really cool thing, is that because these are attached to each other, right? If I still manipulate my circle, my whole thing will be manipulated as well. So maybe I want to make this smaller. So nerves and curves used together are great to create tubes. Would I use polygons to create tubes, like to wrap around and do things like this? I would not. That will be very, very hard. You can do them, but good luck. Because again, the way poly behaves is very, very different. Yes.
Is there a way to like vary the thickness on different areas?
Of course. The same way you manipulate any other nerve, it will work for that. So I'm gonna go ahead back here. And maybe I can make this area slightly bigger. There's an isoparm here that I can select. Or not the isoparm itself, but maybe the whole.
Yes. And you need to manipulate it in the scale tool. Yes.
What is this? Logic behind it, it's not a fixed path, it's just like.
I don't know. I cannot answer that question. I really don't. What I do know is that you can fix it by just selecting on. So it actually follows. I should have done that at the beginning. I must have lost it at some point, but yeah, you can always select this fix path. So this may also have to do also with the way that you're creating the curve. If your curve maybe doesn't have enough points, right? The more points it has, like the more resolution you ultimately have. And it will look smoother. The less points, then the more distorted. I'm gonna go ahead and just do one more example here for you guys. Using curves. All right, so I'm in the side. And I will, right, pay attention so that you know how to do it, okay? So I will start here, right, and using my TP curve, I'm gonna click there, click here, and I'm gonna start kind of going upwards. Like this. Very all right. So that's my option. Enter. That's my curve. So as you saw, I started here and all the way around and then ended up back here. One tool that might be worth exploring is called the revolve. And when you click on the options for revolve, it'll show you the different axes. So you can do the X, the Y, and the Z. You can do linear, cubic, those other things. You can explore the segments, Maybe we want to add some segments to that, and then just click apply. Now it kind of creates again some very interesting objects. So that was using the curved surfaces and revolve. And again, notice how we still have the thicker outline there. And if we were to move the one curve that we created, we can manipulate this even further. So to kind of create, oh look, oh, but you see, it needs the bottom there. Yeah, you can do Maya, and you can use Maya. But yeah, so you can still, I can still grab that curve and manipulate this further, however I see fit. Then I can scale up the size and down. Anyways, that's just one more tool now in your arsenal on how to create using nerves. Thickness of the tube. Well, that's going to be predicated on the thickness that you actually get to do with creating the line. So my line is pretty thin before I end up with something that kind of looks like this. But you saw, this was not my first object that came out of it. I actually manipulated it, and now it looks like this. So you can always manipulate this however you see fit, right? Now I cannot answer, oh, so what are now the endless possibilities that I have in front of me now because I know how to do this? I cannot answer. Right? It's going to be now a matter of, okay, I know these tools. You go ahead and explore them until you start getting familiar with them. And therefore, with time, you start being like, okay, there's going to be some objects that I can definitely use with nerve. I see some people that do nerves for character. I feel that the most tedious way you can ever possibly conceive. But that's just my opinion. You might end up loving nerds. And you're like, yeah, I don't even use polygons. This is my thing. Good for you. I personally love using polygons. I feel I have way more control over them. But there's going to be some instances like this one, like I'm doing a face. I really doing a face. Yeah, you better believe it. I'm using nerds. There's no way I'm using polygons. And anyways, that's just one of multiple examples. Yeah, I would say accessories, right? And because these are still attached, if I were to move it, it will change my object. So if I'm really happy with this object, remember, go into edit and delete history. That's the history between these two objects. Now they're totally independent. They ain't got no history. They don't relate to each other. They don't talk to each other.
Where its origin is,
Right.
so it's like separated from that wall reference. Like you can't edit the forest that it likes to farm and stuff.
Yeah. So I guess go ahead now, take a few moments to kind of explore the different tools. I just show you like just a handful, but there's so many other things that you guys can do. And actually, chapter 6 on the book talks about everything you ever wanted to know about nerves. So if there were things I couldn't answer today, read the book. Chapter 6. It has everything and then some. How about with that one?
Questions. Which tool did you use to work at that base?
To manipulate the base?
Yes, what you have the original.
Oh, so I literally just played with the actual curve that I created at the beginning. Yeah, so I'll do that again, right? So this is my curve. And I can go into one selected surfaces, revolve. Right, and now I can go in because my curve is still selected. Or better yet, actually, my object at this point, the one I just revolved allows me to kind of shape it around. But let's say I click away, then I would need to click on the actual tool or the actual curve I just created and then manipulate it from there. So using only the one curve, you can come up with a whole array of different objects. As a matter of fact, I just remember how deja vu. So when I was teaching this class, I'm talking about maybe 10 years ago, I just remember that for this particular assignment, what I would tell the students to do will be a complete chess game board. So you were working on that? Yes. Awesome. Because these nerves are perfect for something like that. So anyways, I'll think about it. I'm not assigning it just now, but maybe in the next slide. Right now, here's what I want. I want you guys to start playing with nerves. Like just get yourself familiarized with that. Click on everything, okay? Like really try to manipulate, learn ways of doing things, and then try to add or think about ways in which you can manipulate them further to create different objects. So have fun with that, guys. That's literally what I would like you to work with at this moment. Submit any of the assignments. I'm talking about the one that is due today. If you haven't submitted, make sure that you do before next class.
You just wanted the screenshots for that, right?
The screenshots, yes. And if you can give me also the project folder, that'll be great. Because if I run into issues, I can always look into it. Next class, we're going to talk about our following projects. what are we gonna do with that? And just to give you a heads up, we're gonna do a combination of modeling techniques using polys and using nerves. That's what you can expect. And let me see if I can open some. So what time we have? Pretty much. Yes. Okay, I'll do it. Right, here's our next little project. The texture development stuff. So we're,
That's not entirely nerves or.
oh, I don't know, a combination of nerves and polys. So obviously I have to fix the texture. Something happened with my textures here. But yeah, we're creating this kind of like body shell for the little low cart here. We have spoiler, pieces. We got the tires, the threads, the actual coil springs.
Please don't stop. Yeah.
Is this like on make time and stuff?
Details. What's that?
Yeah, stop saying it.
So yeah, that's what I want to strive to do here.
Just the car, right? Not the controls.
Oh, the control, the whole thing.
You know how long it took to make that?
Huh?
You know how many hours it took?
How many hours it took to create that? One day?
I'm gonna suffer, everyone's gonna suffer.
No, it's not that complex, guys. It's really
We
not.
went from making just basically rectangles though in the house.
You've been doing this for a while.
Mhm. And now you're gonna go from a house to a little cart. Control remote cart.
Like 100 times more complicated.
Look at the screen.
Yeah, there's pretty.
So you see, you know, it's funny, like, are you guys like saying this is too challenging? Like, I'm not asking you to do it on your own. Am I doing that?
No.
I will be here. I'm here with you guys. Relax. Right? I'll take you step by step and we'll do this together.
I suppose it depends on how long we have to do it. Not how hard it is.
We have 5 weeks to do this.
Okay.
Yeah, once we are done with, what is it, week 10, then we'll start modeling a character. And that's gonna be our last challenge here. For all class. Oh, by the way, make sure to have everything ready for next class as far as your reads, because there may or may not be a quiz.
So I did this.
Which one?
I had a quiz for Western.
Oh, okay, so,
You know what I started in morning? So like the quiz was technically
I do
due,
something very specific.
like, it was on the syllabus for me, on the 15th,
So go
but
to
she never
your,
mentioned it. And so
this is
then,
why I
like,
was doing it.
this morning I wanted to get to class, and there's like nobody in there, so I'm like, oh, hey, yeah, the professor's not here because of the
I
noise
always
thing.
went into my site,
And I was like,
never
there's
into
a
the
quiz.
top.
Yeah, because like leading up to that, she just talked about the paper that's due like in a week or two.
That's what happened to me today.
Yeah.
Turns out we didn't have class, we were supposed to take a test on Blackboard.
Yeah.
So I was like,
I've been doing this morning, so messed up. I was like, crap, there's a quiz.
No, think about it. Let's look at, just grab it, move to, move everything. One, we want that already into this. So just move to a So this is very important, right? That's the order. Every time you create an object, it comes from here, right? We already know that. It brings it here. Now, if we're revolving means that we're taking a particular outline and revolving it around, right? That's what we're doing. So consider this. If we're revolving on Y, and the object, it comes and crosses, then it wouldn't revolve correctly. So therefore, you want to use this as I did this objects, I never crossed this line because I wanted to revolve. Now, go ahead and revolve that. Let's try that again. Revolve, the object.
Yeah.
So that is interesting. That is interesting.
I'm trying to make it slow.
Because mine will revolve completely. So.
Halfway there.
Instead, let me try. Oh, do you want one? And I will start right here in the origin. Then another thing that I did.
Yeah, like last.
Now sorry.
But technically,
You can probably mix it with the like you add sweet, right?
That's weird, so usually this, they do.
Then I'm fixed.
Anyway,
Man, this thing, I saw something somewhere.
It's suspicious.
I
And
wonder
now you can
why
move
it's
that
connected.
line around. And do
I just have to smack over the
I would minus like.
And it popped all over me.
But what had to.
Cause like you pull up the texture, it had all the circles and it had the texture on it, but it wasn't showing up, so it was like showing the folder.
Yeah.
So I do that with mine.
I don't.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
If he does that with Photoshop, that's too. Like some of the elements that you missed, you just pop in one of the elements back in all the color. Or like the cover element, but not. Yeah, I didn't find
Look at that. So you remember how we added the labels? You can do that now for each side. Is that a horse? Yeah, well, okay, good. Yeah, you can totally do that. Yes. That. So yeah, guys, if you go into, again, your chapter 6, it's just full of a million examples, and they go over each one of those tools. They literally do. I just feel that here in class, I just should give you the ones that I believe are most useful. Those are literally the most useful, in my opinion. Because other than that, I don't really use nerves at all. Like everything else I create with Polis. I just feel it's way easier, straightforward. I know exactly how to go about it. Versus nerves.
It does make sense for like tubes and stuff though.
Yeah, I remember one time I was modeling a pirate ship. And the pirate ship did require a lot of strings everywhere. Yeah, they were all nerves and a bunch of curves. Same thing with the sails. The actual sails were also nerves. And yeah.
I actually like tried to do that with like polygons and like Blender. I didn't know at the time about stuff like curves and stuff. So what I did is I did like I think it's like some kind of tool where when you move one area, you can like adjust the scale and it moves the stuff connected to it. And I just went through the whole thing and manipulated it that way. And it took forever. And then I found out about those and I was like, that would have saved myself a lot of time.
A little.
Like it was doable with the polygons, but it wasn't necessarily the most efficient way of going about it.
Yeah, there's definitely something to say about things that are simple. Because here in Maya, you can do like very simple things and they will look very, very good. Like very good. I just saw the other day some weird very weird music video, like extremely weird music video. It was like out there. But the 3D elements in it, I'm like, that's super easy. It was literally like a phone booth. And it was weird because it was like a lot of phone booth. It was like a duplicate, same exact model of a phone booth, duplicated, and then just moving. And it just had lights coming out of it. And that was a whole entire music video, just that. And I'm like, I can do that. Like it was actually that simple. But the way they made it look and the lights and the render it looked very impressive, but it was not.
That does sound, it's just a mess for itself.
Just moving around at the beat of the song. Yeah.
It's like the Windows screen icon bouncing around the screen, but little Pelican goose.
Yeah. Yeah. Same thing. It was like a console full of cables, and the cables were coming out. That's super easy. Super easy. It'll take you a little bit of time to maybe add the textures to it, and to render it, but to create it itself, that's super easy.
Oh, I had a question. So with the textures only go on the one side, right? It's only a one-sided surface. So you have to like keep that in mind when you make it, so it only touches the one side and texture like so you had to like close off all the edges on that, so you're not getting any of the inside.
Well, yeah, right. I don't, let me see, actually.
So it's like the inside of the two that would be untextured, right?
The thing is that these textures went out of whack, like they shouldn't look like this, like something happened to it. But yeah, you mainly, I mean, this
It's
one
funny,
has,
it looks like it only messed up that.
yeah, and this one has like a very simple texture to it. And you can see how here is the same texture stretched out.
It almost looks like you have like a noise detection,
Uh-huh.
like a bump map,
A bump map, yeah.
but that's just a texture.
No, it is a bump map, actually.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, and this is one of the defaults, actually.
okay. I was like, there's no way that's a texture, the light's moving with it.
You see,
I call it a bump
this is
map.
what happened. That's why that texture looks weird.
What in the world?
What?
It's spaghetti-ified.
Well, good luck getting that out.
So just to let you know, here the issue is that this was done in a very old version of Maya, and by importing it,
Like you told us, it was like, okay,
okay, right.
how, like
So
some
why
stuff
did it
will
only
mess
mess
up.
up that one?
Okay.
because
Like using my 18.
Just because, that's sad.
You think nose or no? Teeth?
Yeah.
That looks like a nightmare.
Listen,
Fix
okay, I'm not
though.
an expert yet. I said. Right.
Oh. It just looks painful. Is there a reason some
where
of
did you come over
those,
here for a second?
is there a reason some of those are blue lines and some of them are white?
Yeah, there's a bunch of things happening now.
I don't know.
No, just like the. Or just like that.
So then you see, I mean, it's not that bad, like, you know, we can
Yeah,
figure
but
this
you have
out.
all that stuff in the background that's annoying to look at.
You know, no, there you go, little by little, like,
Like, is there a way to hide the other stuff?
Okay, hold on.
not really, because all of it is here. So
So.
So you can't see what you're doing though.
you have to go, well, I mean, you just come here, just like I did now. Like, I got no, there's no need for me to decipher this, like, this is not where the solution is. The solution is just by you selecting them here.
Yeah, but it makes it hard to see your new projections.
Extra. We have to.
Well, it's part of it, right? I can only go back and just select the shell.
Oh, fix that one.
show it. I mean, there's different ways of doing this. I can also see the distortions here.
Mine's not right.
Yeah, there's different techniques. You don't have to go over that right now.
Now what happened?
Oh.
Just one time. One day. One day. All right, guys, that's it for class. Have a good one.
Dang it. I was almost close to creating my first knockout fault. Why? I need you to see us in
Oh yeah, that was the coolest thing.
See, I gave him like 2 seats, right? Which is one? Which is one?
I just said this is amazing.
Fair enough.